last year, but in this lecture series, she remains our teacher. Those who knew Mrs. Berman, and a lucky handful of you are among her last students and advisees, have some sense of the teacher she was. Her colleagues certainly knew her, as do hundreds and hundreds of GA and Brunswick alums. In a 30-year career at this school, Jane Berman set the standard for intelligence, rigor, and kindness. Hers was a reputation built not only on astronomical results, though she got those, but also on the human connection that is the deeper measure of our work together. Many of us can still hear her voice or her smiling shrug. Modest, but also knowing and funny. Room 234 is still her classroom, the one right in the middle of the History and English Hall. In that room, you can still see her simple lectern and the raised chair. If I were to tell the story of Greenwich Academy in 5 or 10 objects, one of them would be Mrs. Berman's lectern. It was the perch for 3 brilliant decades of history class. I'd like to thank the generosity of all who have contributed to the fund for this lecture series. It has brought us a wonderful speaker for today, whom Ms. Powers will tell us about in a moment. Before that, I'd like to especially welcome Dr. Don Berman, Mrs. Berman's husband, and Eric, her son. Dr. Berman asked to say a few words, and so he will right now. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us in this memorial lectureship, one of will be many in the future. Jane, and I will keep this short and sweet, was short and sweet. In the coffee room, there are 2 coffee cakes that memorialize her probably closer than anything else. They're both crumb cakes. And for those who knew her in her classroom when things would not go quite just right, never a profane word ever left her lips, but crumb cake was known to be said. And so today, in the spirit of our continuing interest in your future education and the role of women in our society, we now welcome Dr. Lawless, who will, I believe, give a very invigorating speech on the future of women in our political climate. I know Jane would smile from ear to ear at seeing all these smiling faces, not one of which are going to snore or fall asleep during this wonderful lecture, because you will hear the words crumb cake uttered from my lips. So I thank you all for coming here to honor her in memory. My daughter could not be here. She works in London, but my son Eric and myself and I are just overwhelmed with joy to memorialize my wife's memory and make her blessing, her memory a blessing for us all. So thank you for joining us.
Good morning. We are here today to honor a friend, a mentor, wife, mother, colleague, and beloved teacher, Jane Berman. Mrs. Berman, the Bermanator, as many of her students affectionately called her, was a member of the GA community for 30 years. Her classroom presence, sheer love of history, and genuine interest in the lives of her students made her one of the most respected and loved faculty members here on staff. Mrs. Berman earned her PhD in women's history, and throughout her career was dedicated to the advocacy of women. She was a feminist. She loved working in an all-girls school, helping to ignite the passion for intellectual inquiry, but also to watch each and every one of you work towards your own potential. It is in keeping with this passion that we are pleased today to have on campus the League of Women Voters and our guest speaker, Professor Jennifer Lawless. In order to support Mrs. Berman's commitment to women exercising their voices, we are encouraging girls to sign up to vote with Mrs. Petrick today in the cafeteria. And as the League reminds us, having a voice is going to vote, so please register. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Professor Jennifer Lawless. Jennifer Lawless graduated from Union College in Schenectady, New York, with a BA in political science. She went on to receive an MA and PhD from Stanford University in political science as well. A nationally recognized expert on women's involvement in politics, she co-authored with Richard Fox the book, It Still Takes a Candidate, Why Women Don't Run for Office. She has also published numerous articles in political science journals and has issued several policy reports on the barriers that impede women's candidacy and their emergence in political office. From 2003 to 2009, she was an assistant professor at Brown University. During her tenure at Brown, In 2006, she ran in the Democratic primary in my home state of Rhode Island for the 2nd Congressional District. She currently serves as the Director of Women in Politics Institute, as well as an Associate Professor of Government at American University. She is also featured in the movie Misrepresentation, which we'll all watch tomorrow afternoon here in Massey. Please help me give a warm welcome to Professor Jennifer Wallace.
Hello. I'm not going to stand behind a podium because I'm short, and so I learned when I was running for Congress that if I stand behind a podium, you just see a little head, and it's just not a very effective way to communicate. So I'm going to I'll roam the stage. I probably won't move, but at least I have the flexibility. I'm thrilled to be here today, and I was honored when I was invited to come speak to you. And what I would like to do is speak to you a little bit about my research about why women don't run for office, but then segue into my own experiences and highlight what happens when they do. And at the end of the day, hopefully, if nothing else, everybody in this room will have considered a candidacy. And if you decide to pursue it, that's great. If you decide not to pursue it, at least it's a conscious choice. And so I thought I would start out just by giving you some broad statistics. In the United States, 83% of the members of the U.S. House of Representatives